I'm Sean. I am a product manager a senior product manager working for Amazon. And I'm starting this channel, I think mainly to try to demystify some of what it takes to pivot into product management after you've already been working for, in some other role that's not product management. I think everyone has a very clear idea that if you do an executive MBA, that it's going to be a much faster path to getting in, or not just an executive MBA, but an MBA, particularly with an Ivy League school. And that by and large, if you want to get into product management in big tech, straight out of university, that's probably the best path to doing so. But I also think that there are ways to pivot into product management that don't involve spending 50 to 100 grand in taking an MBA course and taking also a year of your life out to pursue that. I personally have been working in Amazon for the last 3 years as a senior product manager, and for the 5 years prior to that I worked in HP as a product manager, working my way up from base level product management until a lead product manager through the different levels. I pivoted, and this is my story, and I'm trying to, I was thinking about filming these videos in a really snappy, highly edited fashion, but I think that the type of people who are going to be actually needing advice around pivoting into product management, that they don't want short, snappy videos. They want actual real life experiences, and these are messy stories. They're not, it's not like 3 quick things to do to pivot into product management. This is a difficult thing to do, and I have a story of how I did it. And so my intention is to try to share my story in the hopes that other people might understand what it took me. There's a couple of things I probably would have done differently if I was to do it again with what I know now. But yeah, that's the intention of this video, and this channel is basically to offer my perspective on ways to improve your likelihood that you're going to be able to pivot into product management. So I started my career as a mechanical engineer. I was designing large-scale water services and heating, ventilation and air conditioning systems for commercial buildings and industrial buildings. Pretty boring stuff. It wasn't really for me. I didn't overly enjoy the work. And following that, I quit my job after about a year and a half in that. And I moved to Brazil. And while I was in Brazil, I decided to do some freelance work because I couldn't speak Portuguese, couldn't get a job in engineering in Brazil. So I did some work in SEO, search engine optimization, running some ads campaigns on Google. This was back in 2015. And yeah, I just kind of took on whatever work I could. I think I also did some technical writing for some companies in the medical devices space. After a while in Brazil, I was there for personal reasons, and I stayed for about 10 months. After a while, I ended up coming back to Dublin. And when I arrived back in Dublin, I met a recruiter thinking about going back into engineering. And ultimately, I ended up moving into recruitment and going into engineering recruitment. I did that for about 9 months, which I enjoyed for a while, but it got kind of repetitive after a while. And at that point, I ended up going on holiday, and I met someone in Barcelona who told me that, if you spoke English and wanted to live in Barcelona, that sales was a viable option. So I moved into a call center in Spain, in Barcelona. Obviously quit my job in recruitment to do that. And then about 6 months into that sales job, the whole office got fired. So we all got fired from the sales job, even though we were all hitting our targets. Basically, some executive who ran that program for that company kind of set the targets wrong, made it too easy for all of us, and all of us hit our targets, but that wasn't good enough to keep that office around. So from there, I ended up moving into a different job within that same call center. So that call center was like an outsourced company that basically sells projects to these big corporations. And in selling those projects, they sell a service. Typically it's sales, customer service, or Yeah, sometimes technical support, things like that. I was working in sales. Originally I was working selling advertising technology, so the likes of Google Ads, Facebook Ads, things like that. And then obviously when we got fired, I managed to find another job within one of these other projects within that call center. And the job I found was what was called a partner manager or partner program manager with HP. And it was specifically for a new acquisition HP had made in the 3D scanning space. And so this acquisition was of a company that built these little 3D scan systems. Very simple. You just place an object on a turntable, you set up the scanner, it scans and produces a 3D digital model of a physical object. And there was all sorts of different use cases for that. My job there was to essentially incentivize the resellers. So they sold through a network of resellers, so it was like a channel management type role, where we would incentivize those resellers through discounts, bundling offers, things like that, to try and sell more of our products to their customers. And I was managing all of EMEA, right? So Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We had 68 resellers spread across those regions. And in general, the job was okay for the first year, or for the first 6 months to 12 months. And we had quite a lot of success in ramping up sales. I think we increased sales by about 35%. After we had done that, the sales began to taper off, and the feedback I started to get from customers was, and I say customers, but I really mean resellers who were getting the feedback themselves from customers. The feedback that I started to get was, we haven't seen a product update since HP acquired this company. What are you guys working on? And I would, go back to, I was working in EMEA, the main team were in the US. I would send emails off and I would look for updates, and nothing really ever came back. Sure, they would give me some marketing content, things like that, but nothing tangible ever came back. So after a little while of this, probably about another 6 months, sales really started to stall. And it wasn't that they were not selling, it was more that the growth was stopping, because there was other competitors who would come along and generated products that were more competitive, usually on performance. So with that, I decided to, out of frustration and kind of to cover myself for being the person responsible for sales, I wanted to make sure that they knew that it's not because of me. There's a need in the market that's being not addressed. And so I wrote a business plan where I outlined, the relevant specifications, upgrades that would be needed for the product in order to be able to continue on the growth pattern that we were on. And on top of that, it wasn't just a specifications upgrade. It was things like, we should start investing in digital marketing. We should be at these shows. We were attending 1 or 2 shows a year, but there was more shows we should have been at. And if we really wanted to position this 3D scanner as like a kind of industrial professional device, there were certain partnerships that we should have pursued with software vendors. And I had identified some of these, and I spelled it out in a business, I think I call it a business plan, but essentially it was like a business requirements document. It wasn't so much like what needs to be built. It was a combination of what needs to be built, how we should position the product, where we should market the product, and the type of users that we should market the product to. And so I wrote this document on it. Anyway, I sent it off to some of the leaders in the business. And the next day, I got a ping on, I think it was Slack or something like that. No, probably not Slack. It was Skype, I think, at the time that we were using. I got a message on Skype from the head of product, a guy called Josh. Really nice guy, still talk to him from time to time. And Josh reached out to me, said, "Hey, you free for a chat?" So I hopped on a call with Josh. And he said, "Hey man, I really like that doc you wrote." And he said, "Are you interested in becoming a product manager? I've got all of these products on my plate. I'm the head of product, so I manage a range of product lines. And this has kind of been the bottom of the priority list for a while, but this really deserves more attention, and it would be great if you were able to pick it up." So I was delighted. I thought I was being offered a job. Unfortunately, I wasn't just yet. But that was the first kind of step into getting like a formal acknowledgement that, hey, you can do this, you can get the experience. And so I decided to, while continuing in the partner role, being much more involved in the product kind of requirements, and I started to work with the development team on the software end and the hardware team on the like how do we need to improve the specifications of the actual hardware, and I engaged with the marketing leadership such that we got certain enough budget so that we could get some decent creatives created, and that they were being distributed appropriately in the right channels, different Facebook groups for advocates of 3D scanning, 3D printing enthusiasts, that type of thing. And ultimately I managed to get into a position where I was spending about half of my time doing product work. After about 6 months doing that, there was a role that opened up in HP for a product manager within the 3D printing division. And at the time we were kind of pitching our technology from 3D scanning into the 3D printing division. And luckily for me, I went for the role, interviewed for it, and the fact that I was able to articulate all that work that I had done, despite my title not saying product manager, I was able to get a foot in the door in product management. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that you kind of have to do the job before you get the title. It's not a straightforward path. As I said earlier, MBA, these types of things are ways to get in, but they're very expensive and they require you taking time out of your career to do them, and so they're not going to be accessible to everyone. As you can hear, I'm still based in Europe. I'm currently working for Amazon. I'm just making these videos to try to demystify some of the things about pivoting into product management that I think I would have benefited from before. In future videos, I'll be going kind of a little bit more specific, and any feedback I'd be welcome to hear.